The celebration lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. The people of Kepler Station had faced the possibility of complete destruction, and they had survived. More than that, they had survived because an alien creature from a different world had chosen to protect them. The story spread across the communication networks of human space like fire. The Crow, one of the most feared species in the galaxy, had attacked the human station and had been driven back by a single Zorathian enforcer bonded to a human scientist. News networks demanded answers. The scientific community wanted to study Vorath. The military wanted to recruit him for other operations. Political leaders wanted to use his existence as leverage in negotiations with alien species. Everyone wanted something from the creature that had saved them. Patricia stood in the main corridor of Kepler Station and watched as people stopped her to thank her. They wanted to touch Vorath. They wanted to see the creature that had killed Krell soldiers and torn apart their ship. In 3 days, Vorath had transformed from a weapon to a symbol. But Patricia understood something that most people did not understand. Vorath was not interested in being a symbol. Vorath was interested in being what he was. He was interested in being bonded to Patricia and doing the work that they did together. 3 days after the battle ended, an emergency council meeting was called. All of the major leaders of the station were present. Admiral Houston was there. Captain Marcus Webb was there. The station commander, Colonel James Davis, was there. Scientists, military officers, and political officials filled the room. Patricia and Vorath sat in the back, watching. "We need to determine what to do with the enforcer," Colonel Davis said. His voice was firm and professional. "The military is requesting that Dr. Cross allow us to use Vorath for training purposes. We want to understand his capabilities better. We want to develop strategies that use his strengths effectively in future combat situations." Patricia stood up. "Vorath is not a piece of equipment," she said clearly. "He is a sentient being. He is an individual. He bonded with me by choice, not because he was forced into it. To use him as nothing more than a training tool would violate the trust he has placed in me." Admiral Houston leaned forward. "Dr. Cross, I understand your position, but we cannot ignore the reality of the galaxy. The Krell are not the only threat out there. There are other species that see humanity as weak. There are other species that see our worlds as places they can take. If Vorath is truly as powerful as the battle demonstrated, then it is foolish not to use that power to protect human space. I am not arguing that we should not use Vorath to protect human space," Patricia said. Her voice was calm but firm. "I am arguing that we should not reduce him to only that purpose. He is more than a weapon. He has proven that. He protected a child in the station before the battle. He made the choice to care about someone other than his bonded partner. That shows intelligence. That shows capacity for compassion. That shows growth beyond his original programming." Marcus Webb had been listening quietly. Now he spoke. "Dr. Cross is right," he said. "We brought the Zorathian enforcer here expecting a weapon. What we got instead was something more valuable. We got proof that beings from different worlds can coexist. We got proof that trust and understanding can exist even between species that should be enemies. The real question we need to ask is not how to use Vorath most effectively in combat. The real question is what Vorath wants to become." Patricia looked at Marcus with gratitude. She understood that he was taking a risk. The military was powerful. The military wanted weapons. The military had the ability to make life difficult for anyone who opposed them. "I propose," Patricia said, "that we allow Vorath and myself to continue our work. I will continue to study his communication, his psychology, his culture. We will share everything we learn with human scientists and researchers. In exchange, Vorath will remain available to defend this station and any human worlds that face serious threats. But he will not be treated as property. He will not be subjected to torture or dissection, or any other form of abuse. He will be treated as what he is, a partner, an individual. The council debated for hours. Some wanted the military to simply take Vorath and force him to comply with their demands. Some understood that forcing Vorath would be both immoral and dangerous. A creature that powerful could not be held against its will. If Vorath turned hostile, the station would be destroyed in minutes. Finally, a vote was called. The decision was made to allow Patricia to continue her work with Vorath. The military would have access to his abilities for defense purposes. But Vorath would not be subjected to training or modification. Over the next months, Patricia and Vorath developed a research program that studied cross-species communication and bonding. Scientists from human worlds came to Kepler Station to learn from Patricia's work. They came to study Vorath. They came to understand what was possible when beings from different worlds could meet not as conquerors or conquered, but as partners. Patricia began writing detailed descriptions of Zorathian biology. She documented their communication systems. She explained how they thought, how they felt, how they understood the world. She shared everything she learned with the human scientific community. More Zorathians began to arrive at Kepler Station. Some came as researchers. Some came as teachers. They were not enforcers. They were not warriors. They were scholars and scientists, just like Patricia. The station transformed from a military outpost into a center of learning and cooperation. The Valorian Coalition began to see humanity differently. They began to see that humans had unique gifts. Humans had creativity. Humans had the ability to see beyond the surface of things. Humans had the capacity to choose compassion, even when the situation demanded selfishness. Vorath, in his own quiet way, became an ambassador. He did not speak at meetings or give speeches. He simply moved through the station, going about his day, showing through his actions what was possible. He played with the station's children, running and jumping in a way that was carefully controlled so that his massive weight and incredible strength did not cause harm. He helped rescue miners who were trapped in cave-ins on the mining colonies that orbited the station. He worked with Patricia in her laboratory, sitting patiently while she made measurements and took notes. People on the station began to call him the Guardian. Children who had never known fear in the presence of an alien predator would grow up believing that trust between different species was not only possible, but normal. They would grow up believing that the most dangerous beings were not monsters, but just different. One evening, Patricia and Vorath stood together in the observation dome, looking out at the stars. Patricia placed her small human hand on Vorath's shoulder, feeling the warmth of his scales and the power of his muscles beneath the surface. "Do you know what the question was?" Patricia asked him. "The question that started all of this?" Vorath made a low rumbling sound. Patricia had learned that this sound meant contentment, but also understanding. "They asked if you were friendly," Patricia said. "And for the longest time, I did not know how to answer that question. But now I think I understand. Friendly is not the right word for what you are. You are not friendly in the way that other creatures are friendly. You are not soft or gentle or kind in the traditional sense. But you are something better than friendly. You are loyal. You are protective. You are willing to make difficult choices for the sake of those you care about. That is better than friendly. That is real." Vorath turned his head and looked at Patricia, his glowing yellow eyes reflecting the light of the stars. He made another sound, a complex pattern of rumbles and clicks that Patricia had never heard before. She did not understand the sound, but she understood the meaning. She understood that Vorath was saying something important, something that mattered deeply. Patricia smiled and squeezed Vorath's shoulder gently. "I know," she said. "I feel the same way." 6 months after the Krell attack, Ambassador Kethis requested a private meeting with Patricia in the observation dome. Patricia walked with Vorath through the corridors of Kepler Station toward the observation area. They had become used to the way people looked at them when they passed. Some people were afraid. Some people were grateful. Some people simply watched in fascination, trying to understand the relationship between the small human woman and the massive alien predator. The observation dome was empty. When they arrived, Ambassador Kethis was already there, his forearms folded in a pattern that Patricia had learned meant peaceful intention. His glowing eyes fixed on Patricia as she approached. "Dr. Cross," Kethis said, "thank you for coming. I wanted to speak with you privately about what has happened here on Kepler Station. It is important that you understand the significance of your work with Vorath." Patricia nodded and stood beside Vorath, her hand resting on his forearm. "What do you mean, Ambassador?" "When the Valorian Coalition decided to give Vorath to humanity, we had a specific goal in mind," Kethis said. "We believed that your species was capable of great things, but we also knew that humanity faced many dangers. There are forces in this galaxy that see younger species as things to be used or destroyed. We brought Vorath as a symbol of protection. We brought him as a tool that would give humanity the chance to prove themselves capable of survival." Kethis paused, and his eyes seemed to glow more brightly. "But what we did not anticipate is what you would do with that tool. We did not anticipate that you would see Vorath as something more than a weapon. We did not anticipate that you would teach him to be something beyond what his creators intended. We did not anticipate that you would choose compassion when you had every reason to choose only power." "What does this mean?" Patricia asked. "It means," Kethis said, "that humanity has proven something important. You have proven that your species has the capacity to see beyond the surface. You have proven that you can form bonds with beings that should be your enemies. You have proven that strength does not require cruelty. This is something remarkable. This is something that will change how the galaxy sees your people." Over the years that followed, Kepler Station became known throughout human space and beyond as a place where something remarkable was happening. Patricia continued her work with Vorath, publishing detailed research on cross-species bonding and communication. Universities on Earth began to teach her theories. Her work became the foundation for new approaches to diplomacy and understanding between human and alien species. Vorath traveled to other human worlds, not as a weapon or a tool, but as an ambassador in his own right. He visited mining colonies and farming settlements. He met with leaders of human governments. He showed, simply through his presence and his actions, what was possible when beings from different worlds could meet with open minds and open hearts. Other Zarathians came to study at Kepler Station. Some were scientists. Some were philosophers. Some were younger Zarathians who had been raised only knowing violence and were learning for the first time what peace could mean. Patricia trained them, just as she had trained Vorath. She taught them that intelligence and power could exist. Alongside mercy and understanding, the scientific discoveries that came from Patricia and Vorath's work were groundbreaking. They discovered that Zarathian communication was far more complex than anyone had realized. They discovered that Zarathians were capable of art and music and creative expression. They discovered that beneath the predatory instincts and the military conditioning, there was a species with rich emotional lives and deep desires for connection. News of this work spread through human space and beyond. The Valorian Coalition was impressed with what humanity had accomplished. But more importantly, other species in the galaxy began to see humanity differently. They began to see humans not as a young, weak species that could be easily dominated, but as a species with unique capabilities. Humans had the ability to see the best in others, even when others were designed to be predators. 10 years after the Krell attack, Patricia stood in a large auditorium on Earth, speaking to an audience of thousands. Scientists and leaders and ordinary people had come to hear her speak about her work with Varth. Varth stood on a stage beside her, a massive figure covered in black scales, his glowing yellow eyes watching the crowd. "When we first encountered Varth," Patricia said, her voice carrying through the auditorium, "we did not know what he was or what he could become. We only knew that he was dangerous. We only knew that he had been trained to kill. But one thing I have learned in my work is that danger and potential are not the same thing. Danger is what something can do. Potential is what something might choose to become." Patricia placed her hand on Varth's shoulder. Vorath was given to humanity as a weapon, but Vorath chose to become something more. He chose to protect. He chose to care. He chose to learn and to grow beyond what he was designed to be. That choice, that simple human concept of choosing who you want to become, is something that we gave him. Not through violence or force, but through understanding and respect and the willingness to see him as something more than the sum of his biology. The auditorium erupted in applause. Patricia could see people crying. She could see people looking at Varth with wonder and awe. She could see that the message was reaching people. The message that beings from different worlds could coexist. That understanding could bridge almost any gap. That the choice to be better than your biology dictates was always available to you. After the presentation, Patricia and Varth walked through the gardens of Earth. It was Patricia's first time on Earth, since she had left it 20 years before for her research work. The gardens were beautiful, with plants and trees and flowers that she had forgotten existed. Varth walked carefully through the narrow paths, his massive body moving with precision so that he did not damage anything. They came to a small pond in the center of the gardens. Patricia sat on a bench beside the water, and Varth stretched out beside her, his great body creating a shadow across the grass. They sat in silence as they had learned to do so many times before. "Do you remember," Patricia said, "when they asked if you were friendly? When that was the question that mattered most in the world?" Varth made a sound, the sound that Patricia knew meant yes. "I think the answer was always more complicated than that," Patricia said. "Friendly is what children are. Friendly is what pets are. But you are neither of those things. You are something unique. You are a being who could have been a predator without mercy. You could have been exactly what they designed you to be. But instead, you chose to be something that the world did not know it needed. You chose to be a bridge between worlds." Varth shifted his position, and his great head came close to Patricia's face. He made a series of sounds, a complex pattern that Patricia recognized as one of his important communications. She did not know the exact translation, but she understood the meaning. He was expressing something deep and important. He was expressing gratitude and affection, and the knowledge that their bond had changed both of them. Patricia reached up and touched Vorath's face, feeling the warmth of his scales beneath her hand. Tears were running down her face, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of joy and understanding, and the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing that you have made the right choice, that you have built something beautiful with your own hands and heart dot around them. Earth continued its rotation. In space, Kepler Station continued its orbit, serving as a beacon of hope and understanding for countless beings from countless worlds. And in a garden on the home world of humanity, a small human woman and a massive alien predator sat together in peace. Proof that the galaxy was larger and more filled with possibility than anyone had ever imagined. The question that had started everything, the simple question of whether the creature was friendly, had been answered in a way that no one could have predicted. The answer was not yes or no. The answer was something deeper and more true. The answer was that Varth, through the power of choice and understanding and the willingness to see beyond biology, had become something that the world did not know it needed. He had become proof that kindness could coexist with power, That strength did not require dominance. That the most dangerous beings were capable of becoming the most protective ones if given the chance to choose who they wanted to be. And that, Patricia thought, was the real gift that the Valorian coalition had given to humanity. Not a weapon, not a tool, but the knowledge that transformation was possible. That understanding could bridge any gap. That the choice to be better than your biology dictates was always available to you if you were brave enough to take it. Kyle Matthews pulled at the collar of his formal suit and tried not to look as nervous as he felt. The orbital station Unity Prime stretched around him like a massive wheel in space, and through the tall windows he could see a dozen alien ships docked at various ports. 3 months ago, he had been a mid-level diplomat handling trade disputes between Earth nations. Now he was Ambassador Kyle Matthews, representing all of humanity at the biggest diplomatic party in the galaxy. "Stop fidgeting," Lisa Grant whispered beside him. She was his cultural liaison, a woman who had somehow memorized the customs of 40 different alien species in just 2 months. "You're making us look weak." "I feel weak," Kyle muttered back. "There's a guy over there with 6 arms and he's juggling drinks. How am I supposed to compete with that?" Lisa smiled despite herself. "You're not competing. You're representing. Just be polite. Don't promise anything without checking with Earth first. And for the love of everything, don't make any jokes." Alien humor is complicated. Kyle nodded and grabbed a glass of something blue from a passing server. He took a small sip and immediately regretted it. The drink tasted like metal and flowers had a baby. He forced himself to swallow and smiled weakly. The reception hall was enormous, filled with beings that Kyle's brain still struggled to process as real. There were floating jellyfish creatures that communicated through color changes. A group of bird-like aliens with 4 wings stood in a corner, their feathers shimmering with every movement. Near the food tables, a species that looked like walking trees discussed something in deep, rumbling voices. "Ambassador Matthews?" A voice spoke from behind him, clear and strong. Kyle turned and found himself looking up at one of the most imposing beings he had ever seen. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, with skin that looked like living crystal, reflecting the station's lights in rainbow patterns. She had 4 arms, each ending in 3-fingered hands, and her eyes were a deep purple color that seemed to glow faintly. She wore what was clearly a military uniform, dark blue with silver markings that Kyle assumed were rank insignia. "Yes, that's me," Kyle said, trying to keep his voice steady. "And you are?" "Commander Vrixala of the Thran Dominion." She gave a slight bow, which Kyle awkwardly returned. "I wanted to meet the representative of humanity. Your species is new to the galactic community." "Very new," Kyle agreed. "We're still figuring out which fork to use at these things." He regretted the joke immediately, but Vrixala just tilted her head, clearly confused. "You do not know your own utensil protocols?" she asked seriously. "No, I just meant." Kyle stopped and glanced at Lisa, who gave him a warning look. "Never mind. It's nice to meet you, Commander." Vrixala seemed to accept this and moved to stand beside him, looking out at the gathering. "I have been studying your world, Earth, a remarkable planet. Your gravity is quite high, your atmosphere is rich in oxygen, and you have dangerous weather patterns. Yet your species thrived there." "Well, pretty tough, I guess," Kyle said, taking another unfortunate sip of his blue drink. "I am curious about your military capabilities," Vrixala continued. "The Thran are warriors by nature. We respect strength. I have read that humans have many conflicts in their history." Kyle felt Lisa tense beside him. Military discussions were supposed to go through proper channels, not casual party conversation. But Vrixala seemed genuinely curious, not threatening. "We've had our share of wars," Kyle admitted. "We're trying to be better about that now." "Your soldiers," Vrixala pressed. What augmentations do they receive? How much technological enhancement is required for them to function in combat? Kyle blinked. Augmentations? You mean like robot parts? Of course. Most species in the galaxy require extensive modification to serve as soldiers. Neural implants for faster reactions, skeletal reinforcement for strength, organ replacement for endurance. Unaugmented soldiers are considered primitive and ineffective. Vrixala's crystalline face showed what might have been curiosity. Does Earth not have this technology yet? Something about her tone annoyed Kyle. The suggestion that humans were primitive, that their soldiers weren't good enough without alien technology. He knew he should be diplomatic, should smile and nod, and change the subject. But the blue drink was making him bold, and Lisa's constant warnings had made him feel like a child all evening. We don't need all that fancy tech, Kyle said, gesturing with his glass. Human soldiers are fine just the way they are. We're persistence hunters. Do you know what that means? Vrixala leaned closer, her purple eyes focusing intently on him. Explain. It means we can literally chase an enemy until they drop dead from exhaustion, Kyle said, warming to his topic. He was exaggerating, playing it up, but it felt good to brag a little. Humans have this thing where we just don't stop, ever. We can run for hours, days even. We can function on almost no sleep. We heal from injuries that would kill other species. And we're probably the only people crazy enough to keep fighting even when we're half dead ourselves. Lisa's hand gripped his arm, her nails digging in slightly. A warning. But Kyle was on a roll now. And here's the thing, he continued. We don't just fight. We think, we adapt. We come up with new strategies on the fly. Human soldiers have won battles against enemies with better technology, better weapons, better everything, just because we refused to give up and we outsmarted them. Vrishala's expression had changed. Her crystalline features seemed sharper somehow, more focused. This is truly accurate. You are not using exaggeration. Kyle laughed, thinking she was playing along. I mean, yeah, we're weird like that. We're also the species that looks at dangerous predators and thinks, I'm going to make that my friend. We keep wolves as pets. Wolves, and we do dangerous stuff just for fun. Jumping out of aircraft, climbing mountains, swimming with sharks. It's like we're hardwired to laugh at death. One of Vrixala's forearms moved to a device on her belt. She tapped something, and Kyle saw a small light blink. Was she recording this? Commander Vrixala, Lisa interjected smoothly. Perhaps we should discuss this through proper diplomatic channels. Ambassador Matthews is not a military specialist, but he speaks truth about his species? Vrixala asked, her eyes never leading Kyle. Well, yes, but the context is important, Lisa started to say. Thank you, Ambassador Matthews, Vrixala said formally. She gave another bow, deeper this time. This information is most valuable. I will be in contact. She walked away with purpose, her crystalline skin catching the light as she moved through the crowd toward a group of other Thran officers. Kyle watched her go, then turned to Lisa with a grin. See, that wasn't so bad. I think I made a good impression. Lisa's face was pale. Kyle, what did you just do? What? I just talked about how great human soldiers are. Isn't that good? Showing strength and all that? You weren't joking, Lisa said slowly. She thinks you were giving her an official military briefing. No, she knows I was just messing around. Right. Kyle looked back at where Vrixala was now in deep conversation with her fellow officers, all of them looking at the device she held. The Thran don't have a concept of self-deprecating humor, Lisa said quietly. They don't exaggerate about military matters, ever. She thinks everything you just said was literal fact. Kyle's grin faded. Oh, yeah. Oh, Lisa grabbed his arm. Come on. We need to report this to Earth immediately. As they hurried out of the reception hall, Kyle glanced back one more time. Rixala was watching him, and even from across the room, he could see the intensity in her purple eyes. She raised one hand in what might have been a salute. Kyle had a sinking feeling that his casual joke had just become very, very serious. 3 days had passed since the reception, and Kyle had almost convinced himself that nothing would come of his conversation with Rixala. He was sitting in his small apartment on Unity Prime, eating breakfast and reading the news feeds from Earth, when his communication device started blaring an emergency signal. Ambassador Matthews, you are required to report to Conference Room 7 immediately, a crisp voice announced. This is Priority Alpha. Kyle nearly choked on his coffee. Priority Alpha meant the highest level of diplomatic emergency. He threw on his formal suit and ran through the station corridors, his heart pounding. When he reached Conference Room 7, he found it packed with Earth's entire diplomatic corps and several military advisors he had never seen before. Admiral Richard Hayes, a stern man with gray hair and more medals than Kyle could count, stood at the head of the table. Ambassador Matthews, good of you to join us. Sit down. Kyle sat, looking around the room at the grim faces. Lisa was there too, looking like she hadn't slept in days. 3 hours ago, Admiral Hayes began, we received an official request from the Thran Dominion. They want Earth to provide military assistance in their ongoing conflict with the Zarthic swarm. He paused, his jaw tight. They specifically requested human soldiers based on capabilities described by you, Ambassador Matthews. The room fell silent. Everyone was looking at Kyle. I can explain, Kyle started. It was just a conversation. I was exaggerating. I didn't think she would take it seriously. Well, she did, Admiral Hayes said. He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed Kyle at the reception, talking to Rixala. Kyle's voice played back, crystal clear. We can literally chase an enemy until they drop dead from exhaustion. Humans have this thing where we just don't stop, ever. We can run for hours, days even. We can function on almost no sleep. We heal from injuries that would kill other species. Watching it without the context of the party, without his nervous laughter, without the casual tone, it sounded like an official military briefing. Kyle felt sick. The Thran have no concept of joking about military capabilities, said a woman Kyle didn't recognize. She wore a suit marked with the insignia of Earth's intelligence service. They interpreted your words as factual statements about human combat effectiveness. Can't we just tell them it was a misunderstanding? Kyle asked desperately. We could, said General Marcus Webb, a large man with dark skin and sharp eyes. But consider this. The Thran are one of the 3 major military powers in this region of space. They've been trying to figure out what humanity brings to the galactic table. Right now, they think we bring exceptional soldiers. If we admit that was all lies or exaggeration, what does that say about us? It says we're honest, Lisa interjected. It says we're weak, General Webb countered. It says our ambassador doesn't know what he's talking about. It damages our credibility in every future negotiation. There's another angle, said Colonel Nina Torres, a woman with short black hair and scars on her hands. Kyle recognized her from news reports. She led Earth's elite Special Operations Division. I've been studying the Zarthic. They're insectoids, highly aggressive, excellent individual fighters. But they have predictable tactics. They rely on overwhelming force and rapid assaults. They expect enemies to either run away or dig in and defend. What are you suggesting? Admiral Hayes asked. I'm suggesting that Ambassador Matthews might not have been completely wrong, Colonel Torres said. She pulled up data on her tablet. The Zarthik have tough exoskeletons and powerful weapons, but their combat operations are short. They hit hard and fast, usually crushing resistance in 6 to 8 hours. After that, they withdraw to rest and regroup. And? Kyle asked. And humans don't fight like that, Taurus continued. We have tactics they've never encountered. Guerrilla warfare, harassment, psychological operations. We can operate for extended periods without rest. We're adaptable. If we use human tactics instead of trying to fight like other galactic species, we might actually be effective against them. You're serious, Kyle said slowly. You actually want to send soldiers based on my stupid joke. It's not just about the joke anymore, Admiral Hayes said. The Thran have already adjusted their defensive strategy based on the promise of human assistance. They've pulled forces from other sectors. If we refuse now, we don't just look weak. We look like we betray an ally. The Thran take honor very seriously. Kyle put his head in his hands. How many soldiers are we talking about? 50, Colonel Torres said. A single special operations unit. Enough to make a difference if we're smart about it. Small enough that we're not overcommitting. And if they get killed because I bragged about capabilities we don't actually have, then we face the consequences, General Webb said bluntly. But I've reviewed Colonel Torres's analysis. I think we can do this. Not because we're superhuman, but because we fight differently than anyone in the galaxy expects. The door to the conference room opened, and a tall figure entered. Rixala walked in, her crystalline skin gleaming under the lights. She was accompanied by 2 other Thran officers. Ambassador Matthews, she said formally. I am here for the official discussion of military cooperation. Kyle stood slowly. Commander Rixala, I need to clarify something about our conversation. You wish to provide additional details about human combat capabilities? Rixala asked. Excellent. The Zarthik are planning a major assault on the colony world Kreshvar. We have 2 weeks to prepare. No, I need to explain that I might have exaggerated some things, Kyle said carefully. Humans are capable, but I may have made us sound more impressive than we really are. Rixala's purple eyes studied him intently. You told untruths about your species' abilities? Not exactly untruths. More like enthusiastic descriptions. Do humans not persist in hunting prey until the prey exhausts itself? Kyle hesitated. Well, historically, yes. That's how our ancestors hunted on Earth. Do human soldiers not function on minimal sleep during extended operations? They can, yes, but do humans not form emotional bonds with dangerous creatures that other species would fear? Kyle thought about all the videos of people cuddling with tigers and swimming with sharks. We do tend to befriend things we probably shouldn't. Then you told truth, Rixala said simply. Perhaps you did not realize how unusual these traits are. Most species cannot do these things. The fact that humans consider them normal is itself remarkable. Colonel Torres stepped forward. Commander Rixala, if we send forces to assist you, we need to use human tactics. We don't fight like the Thran. We need freedom to operate in our own way. Explain, Rixala commanded. We don't stand and slug it out with superior forces, Torres said. We move, we adapt, we strike from unexpected angles. We harass and exhaust the enemy. We make them afraid. Some might consider our tactics dishonorable. Rixala was quiet for a moment. Then she made a gesture with 2 of her 4 arms. The Zarthik have killed thousands of Thrawn civilians. They raid our colonies, take our young, and show no mercy. If human tactics can stop them, I care nothing for honor. I care about results. Then we have an agreement, Admiral Hayes said. Colonel Torres will lead a special operations unit to Kreshvar. Ambassador Matthews will accompany them as diplomatic observer. Kyle's head snapped up. Wait, what? I'm not a soldier. No, but this is your promise to fulfill, General Webb said firmly. You made the commitment. You see it through. The ambassador will be kept safe, Rixala assured them. He will observe from the command center with me. But his presence is important. It shows that Earth stands behind its words. Kyle looked around the room at all the serious faces. He had started this with a casual joke at a party. Now human soldiers were going into combat, and he was responsible. The weight of it pressed down on him like a physical force. I understand, he said quietly. When do we leave? Transport departs in 6 hours, Rixala said. Pack light. The colony is under siege conditions. As the meeting broke up and people filed out, Lisa caught Kyle's arm. Are you okay? No, Kyle admitted. I keep thinking about what happens if I was wrong. If humans aren't as capable as I said. If people die because I was showing off. Then we make sure you weren't wrong, Lisa said. We make sure those soldiers come home. Kyle nodded, but as he left to pack his things, he couldn't shake the image of Rixala's and tense purple eyes. She believed in humanity because of his words. Now he had to hope that his joke contained enough truth to keep people alive. The transport to Kreshver would be a 3-day journey. Kyle had 3 days to prepare himself for the possibility that his casual conversation had started something that could either prove humanity's worth or destroy Earth's reputation forever. The transport ship emerged from faster-than-light travel, and Kyle got his first view of Kreshver through the observation window. The colony world looked peaceful from orbit, a blue and green planet that reminded him of Earth. But as they descended, he could see the scars. Smoke rose from several locations, and entire sections of the main settlement showed blast damage. The Zarthik hit us 3 times in the past month, Rixala explained. She stood beside Kyle in the observation deck, her 4 arms clasped behind her back in a military stance. Each raid took more territory. They are testing our defenses, preparing for a final assault. The transport landed at the colony's military base, and Kyle followed Rixala down the ramp. The human soldiers were already disembarking from their section of the ship, moving with efficient precision. Kyle watched them assemble in formation, and his heart sank a little. They looked small compared to the Thran soldiers standing nearby. The Thran warriors were massive, 7 feet tall, with thick crystalline skin that served as natural armor. They carried heavy weapons that looked like they could blow holes in buildings. The humans, by contrast, wore lighter armor and carried smaller rifles. Several Thran soldiers were staring at the humans with what Kyle suspected was disappointment. Colonel Torres approached, saluting Rixala. Commander, my unit is ready for briefing. Follow me, Rixala said. They gathered in a command center built into a reinforced bunker. Holographic displays showed the colony layout and surrounding terrain. Rixala pointed to several areas marked in red. The Zarthik typically attack from these positions, she explained. They send wave after wave of warriors. Each warrior is heavily armored and carries plasma weapons. They are stronger than Thran, faster, and they fight without fear of death. We estimate the next assault force will number between 3,000 and 5,000 warriors. Kyle did the math quickly. 5,000 Zarthik against a few hundred Thran defenders and 50 human soldiers. It sounded like suicide. How do you normally defend against them? Torres asked. We form defensive lines here, and here. Rixala indicated positions on the map. We use our heavy weapons to cut down as many as possible. When they break through, which they always do, we fall back to secondary positions. Eventually, they exhaust themselves and withdraw. Then we rebuild and wait for the next attack. You're fighting a war of attrition, Torres said thoughtfully. It is the only way, one of the other Thran officers said. He sounded defensive. The Zarthik cannot be outmaneuvered. They simply overwhelm any position with numbers. Torres studied the map for a long moment. Commander Vrixala, I need permission to deploy my unit independently. We won't be defending your positions. Then what will you be doing? Vrixala asked. Hunting, Torres said simply. You said the Zarthic attacks last 6 to 8 hours before they withdraw. What if they didn't get to withdraw? What if someone kept hitting them, kept them engaged, kept them moving and fighting long after they wanted to stop? They would destroy such a force, the Thran officer objected. 50 soldiers cannot stand against thousands. We're not going to stand against them, Torres explained. We're going to hit and run, ambush and retreat. We'll use the industrial sector as cover. Every time they try to advance on your positions, we'll attack their flanks. Every time they turn to chase us, we disappear. We won't let them rest. We won't let them recover. We'll exhaust them. Vrixala's crystalline face was hard to read, but Kyle thought he saw doubt there. This seems like a coward's tactic. It's a human tactic, Torres said firmly. Commander, you requested human soldiers because Ambassador Matthews told you what we could do. This is what we do. We don't fight fair. We fight smart. We make the enemy tired, confused, and scared. Then we break them. There was a long silence. Finally, Vrixala gestured with 2 arms. You will have your chance, but I am assigning liaison officers to accompany your teams. If this fails, I need to know why. Fair enough, Torres agreed. How long until the next attack? Intelligence suggests within 48 hours, Vrixala said. Torres nodded and turned to her soldiers. You heard the commander. We have 2 days to prepare. Let's get to work. The humans dispersed quickly, moving through the colony to scout positions and plan their tactics. Kyle watched them go, then turned to find Vrixala studying him. Your soldiers are very confident, she observed. They're very good at what they do, Kyle said, hoping it was true. Colonel Torres has been in combat on Earth. She knows how to fight against superior numbers. We shall see, Vrixala said. Come, Ambassador. I will show you where you will observe the battle. The command center was impressive, full of holographic displays and communication equipment. Kyle was given a station where he could monitor both the Thran defensive positions and the human teams. He spent the next 2 days watching the humans prepare, feeling increasingly nervous. They didn't prepare like the Thran did. The Thran soldiers drilled in formation, practicing their defensive positions, checking and rechecking their heavy weapons. The humans spread out through the industrial sector, mapping every building, every alley, every possible route. They placed hidden equipment in unexpected locations. They studied the Zarthic attack patterns from previous raids. On the second night, Kyle couldn't sleep. He went to the observation deck and found Colonel Torres there, staring out at the colony lights. Can't sleep either? She asked. I keep thinking about what happens if this goes wrong, Kyle admitted. If you get hurt because I exaggerated about human capabilities. Torres smiled slightly. Ambassador, I read the transcript of your conversation with Vrixala. You didn't exaggerate as much as you think. I said humans could chase enemies until they dropped dead from exhaustion. That sounds pretty exaggerated. My unit once conducted operations for 72 hours straight with minimal sleep, Torres said. We covered over 100 miles on foot, engaged the enemy multiple times, and completed our objective. That was in Earth gravity, in hostile terrain, with limited supplies. Humans are endurance hunters. That's not a joke. That's biology. But can 50 soldiers really make a difference against thousands? In a straight fight? No. But this won't be a straight fight. Torres turned to face him. Ambassador, the Zarthic have been raiding colonies for decades. They've never encountered an enemy that fights the way we're going to fight. They've never dealt with guerrilla tactics. They're going to be confused, frustrated, and exhausted. And confused, frustrated, exhausted enemies make mistakes.
I hope you're right, Kyle said.
Me too, Torres admitted. But either way, thank you.
For what?
For bragging about us. Even if it was accidental. She smiled. It's nice to know someone thinks human soldiers are impressive. The alarm sounded at dawn the next morning. Kyle rushed to the command center to find controlled chaos. Sensors had detected a massive Zarthek force approaching from the east. 5,200 warriors, a Thrawn officer reported. Multiple assault groups. ETA 20 minutes. Rexily stood at the center of the command center, her forearms moving across multiple displays. All Thran units to defensive positions. Prepare for engagement. Kyle found his station and pulled up the displays showing the human teams. 50 soldiers spread across the industrial sector, waiting in shadows and hidden positions. They looked so small compared to the approaching wave of Zarthik warriors. On the main screen, Kyle could see the enemy now. The Zarthik were nightmare creatures, each one standing 8 feet tall with thick chitinous armor covering their bodies. They had 4 legs and 2 arms, each arm ending in claws that could also grip weapons. Their heads were insectoid, with multiple eyes and massive mandibles. They moved in a coordinated swarm, thousands of them flowing across the terrain like a living wave. Thran forces. Prepare for impact, Rixala ordered. The Zarthik smashed into the Thran defensive line like a hammer. Plasma fire lit up the dawn sky. Explosions shook the ground. The Thran fought bravely, their heavy weapons cutting down dozens of enemies. But the Zarthik just kept coming, climbing over their own dead to reach the defenders. Human teams. This is Torres, Kyle heard over the communication channel. Wait for it. Wait for it. Now. On his display, Kyle saw the human soldiers move. They emerged from their hiding spots behind the main Zarthik force. They weren't attacking the front lines. They were hitting the support elements, the commanders, the communication nodes. Explosions rippled through the Zarthik rear positions. Human soldiers fired quick bursts, then disappeared back into the buildings before the enemy could respond. The Zarthik swarm began to fragment, some units turning to chase the humans while others continued the assault on the Thran lines. They are dividing the enemy force, Rixala said. Her voice filled with surprise. The battle that should have lasted 6 hours stretched to 8, then 10. Kyle watched in amazement as the human teams refused to let the Zarthik rest. Every time the enemy tried to regroup, humans attacked from a new direction. Every time the Zarthik pushed hard against the Thran lines, humans struck their flanks or rear dot at the 12-hour mark. Kyle noticed something on the displays. The Zarthik were moving slower. They weren't coordinating as well. Some warriors were falling behind their units. Are they getting tired? He asked Rixala. She studied the tactical data, her crystalline face